Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 23, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Also, become a program sponsor today. Where are my business owners at? Get your gear, products, merchandise, or services out to the general public. Program sponsorships include a custom written script to advertise your business to its fullest potential to get the results you're looking for. To learn more, email me today at thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. It's not every day you have the moment to sit down with a Naval JAG officer and have a conversation about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, we welcome U.S. Naval Commander Johnathan Hullihan to the program. Johnathan is a Texas native and was raised in Montgomery County. He earned a football scholarship to Texas State out of high school, where he met Jennifer, his college sweetheart. They have been married now for 14 years and have 3 beautiful children. After graduation from Texas State, Hullihan attended Loyola University College of Law and was awarded a Dean's Merit Scholarship. After graduating from Loyola with a Juris Doctorate, Hullihan was commissioned as a naval officer in the Navy Judge Advocate General's Corps. As an active duty Navy JAG for over 13 years, Hullihan navigated the nation's most complex matters of law and policy, serving as legal counsel and advisor to the Navy SEAL teams, the United States Navy Blue Angels, and other special operations units in the United States Central Command Theater of Operations. Hullihan's experience includes drafting legislative proposals, analysis of congressional committee reports, and constitutional analysis of national authority. With the desire to return with his family home to his roots in Montgomery County, Texas, Hullihan resigned his active duty commission in 2020. As a recognized expert in international law, cyber law, and intelligence law, Hullihan has been selected as a commander in the Naval Reserves, assigned to a national security law unit. With that, we are honored to be joined by Johnathan Hullihan himself. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the wonderful introduction, Brian. I appreciate it.
I mean, I had to shrink it down because, if not, we'd have been here all day reading all of your accomplishments. You have had a storied career, and I don't say that lightly. Storied career. You, sir, are an admirable guy, certainly honorable, and your service. It all backs it up. Everything that you've done in your life, and it's pretty good to see, man. And I'm very excited to dig in and talk to you a little bit about it today.
Yeah, I've been blessed and been in the right place at the right time, and really surrounded by wonderful people my entire career that have anything I've accomplished has been a team effort. So I'm humbled by it.
Awesome, man. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on the program here. We've got a lot of veterans out there. We have a lot of veteran supporters, and we have everyday just American people that want to hear just stories, of everyday people that we will essentially inspire and add life value to so many folks out there that are looking for it, in a time of our country that, we have so much negative out there. This program is aimed at putting the positivity out there. And with your job, and your career in football and all this other stuff, I just found that you would be a very good guest to come on and talk a little bit about what you've done in your life. And again, I am honored to have you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to get any positive message out there.
Absolutely. So let's get started here. We got a lot to talk about, Commander. So what was life like growing up as a kid in Montgomery County, Texas?
Well, it was really a wonderful upbringing. I mean, the people in Montgomery County are some of the most salt of the earth, wonderful, hardworking, patriotic Texans and Americans out there. It really taught me the value of a dollar, the hard day's work, the value of that, and really everything that I've gotten in my life has been as a result of growing up here, because the lessons learned about working for things, and there's nothing comes for free. That all came from growing up in Montgomery County. I mean, 10 years old, I was mowing lawns with my friends, who, by the way, I'm still best friend. We're all still best friends, still talk all the time, forge those relationships that last a lifetime. My parents used to, if you want extra things, you have to earn the money and buy it yourself. So I wanted, designer jeans or shirts or whatever. I had to go earn it. So it really, just that whole mentality out here in Montgomery County really brought me up right. And I'm really blessed and honored to have that opportunity.
From your time as a kid growing up here in Montgomery County and looking back on it right now, would you say that it's similar, or have things changed a little bit?
Well, a lot of the same people are still here, but it has changed dramatically. I mean, I grew up over in East Montgomery County area, and that entire area is completely different. I mean, we would have to drive all the way to Humble if you wanted to go out to a restaurant or see a movie or do anything like that. So, where I used to go play in the woods and shoot shotguns or neighborhoods, a lot of that area has been developed, across from New Caney High School, where the new stadium is. That was just woods for miles and miles. So it's changed dramatically. And with that change, a lot of new people have come in. And I think that's what has a lot of people. They don't want the culture to change of hard work, family values. So that's, I think the core foundation is still there, and I'm hopeful that core foundation remains, because it was a great way to grow up. It was a great upbringing. And like I said earlier, it taught me the values that made me the man I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about growing up a couple days ago on one of these shows, and it's just like, I remember the days we would go outside, until the street lights came on, or even beyond then, drinking out of a water hose, hiking the canyons of San Diego, playing on the train tracks, skateboarding through storm sewers. I mean, like, literally lived it up, collecting baseball cards and just riding your bikes to the park. It just seems like that just isn't around anymore. And that wasn't long ago that we got to experience this like upbringing, like that was like the Goonies or like Stand By Me, like those are two of my favorite movies. And I go back and sometimes I'll watch them and I'll just reminisce. I'm like, man, it's so euphoric. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. You nailed it. I mean, my mom would say, be home by dark, and I'd leave in the morning. And, if your parents want to get a hold of you, they'd start the call chain of all your friends in the neighborhood until they got a hold of you. And those were the good old days. And, I try and have my kids do the same thing, go ride your bike, come back in a few hours. I live in a neighborhood where it's a little safer to do that. And I want them to experience some of the same childhood that I have, with a little bit of freedom and a little bit of independence, and not so much helicopter parent, and allow them to experience that same thing. Because it helps with independence. It helps with confidence, and it helps foster relationships. Like I said, with some of my friends I still talk to all the time, that we have those experiences together.
Sure. Yeah. Growing up with no cell phones, my mom said, check in with me at least once. I'm like, so what would I do? I would go find a payphone and I would call collect, and they would say your name at the beep. And I'd say, Mom, I'm checking in. And then she wouldn't, accept the call. And then I would hang up. So she knew that I was good to go. And that was my calling in. So I used the payphone to my advantage to check in with my mom. She knew I was good, and I was back in another 8 hours or whatever it was. So
it's like that old AT&T commercial where the guy that had a baby and he'd call his family collect and say, "We had a baby, it's a boy." Do you remember that one?
That is hilarious, man. Yeah, that's probably not the way you want to find out, coming from family or whatever, but man, crazy, crazy times, huh? So let's talk a little bit about your football career. I mean, you were an athlete in high school. You played football, and not only did you play football, but you played it well enough to earn a scholarship to go to Texas State. What was it like growing up in small town Texas and strapping it on every Friday night and playing underneath the Friday night lights of Texas, man?
I mean, it was an amazing experience and kind of similar to growing up in Montgomery County and those values. I think that those values I learned at New Caney High School with our coaches, I mean, they were hard on us. I talked to one of my old coaches recently, and he said, "Man, we can't do what we did to you guys. We go to jail now." But I mean, just the brutality of, the battle of Friday night and leading up to it, of, the drills we used to run and just beating us down to the brink of physical and mental breaking point, but only to make us stronger in the end. So it's funny. My kid, out here now, his coach was one of the coaches that was the coach for Montgomery when we played them in our district. And I reminded him of a game where we beat them 28-27 because I recovered a fumble, and he still remembered the game. So even 20-something years later, those memories are still fresh when I passed the stadium that we played out in Montgomery. And it was amazing. I mean, I played with Adam Dunn. He was our quarterback. If you remember him, he played professional baseball for the Reds. And
Adam Dunn. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was our high school quarterback. He played free safety too. So even in high school, he was 6'5", 240, playing free safety and quarterback. So, having a guy like that on your team made it pretty easy to dominate. And at least my junior year, we were ranked. I think we got to third or fourth in the state. My parents couldn't even get tickets to the game. They had to bring in extra stands. We would have 15, 20,000 people at the game in the old New Caney Stadium. It was a really surreal, awesome experience. And like I said, it helped teach me some of the lessons that I brought forward in my life about hard work and dedication and teamwork and, sacrificing, physical and mental pain with a goal in mind. So it was amazing. And, my son's playing football, and I don't think it's the same kind of game it was 20-something years ago, but they're still pretty hard on him, which I appreciate because I want him to learn some of those same lessons. So it was amazing, and I was blessed and honored to get a scholarship to Texas State University, and then at Texas State, I realized that, every person on the team was the best on their team. They were all district, all state, all everything. And the speed of the game just dramatically increased. It was amazing how fast the game got in college. And, the strength, the size of everyone involved. So it was that was a very humbling experience as well. But, all those lessons learned were really valuable to me.
What were you, a linebacker?
Well, in high school, I played O-line, D-line. In college, they transitioned me to D-line. So I was a lot bigger then. I mean, I'm still big, but I was, pushing 300 pounds, and I was really strong. I was strong and a lot quicker, obviously. But no, it was a great experience. And even at almost 300 pounds, I mean, some of the linemen were 360, 380, 6'5", 6'6". So, the guy that I backed up, Clinton Ballard, he went on in the NFL. So, I didn't get much playing time backing up a NFL guy, but, I'd go in on the every third series or so and and it was good. And but I also am lucky in the fact that I was able to get my education for free. Well, they say it's free, but every day I get out of bed, I feel it. It wasn't so free because I don't move like I used to. All those hits are coming back to haunt me.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, you earned a scholarship and you went on to get a degree from Texas State. And then even thereafter, you went on to law school. Mm-hmm. And, you have a lot of schooling, like I was saying, I was looking at your bio and I had to cut it out because there's just so much there. What was that like, getting out of college and then going to law school and then all of a sudden saying, hey, I'm a lawyer now and I'm going to join the Navy, so it's kind of like all that work, all that college to say, now I'm going into the Navy to become a Naval JAG officer. What really inspired that, and like what led up to that decision?
Well, law school was very eye-opening, especially the school I went to, Loyola. It was a Jesuit school, and they had basically a cut. Law school is different now, but at that time, they expected to weed out anybody that shouldn't be a lawyer or didn't belong. Mm-hmm. So it was very apparent to me that the goal, at least in my first year, was to get rid of folks that don't belong in law school and shouldn't be there or shouldn't be future lawyers. So it was a huge, shocking experience to me to go from Texas State University, where, I got 4.0 in my major. I was cum laude, graduated with high honors, double major, to get into law school. And again, it was almost like the best analogy was the transition from high school to college football, where, man, everybody was fast, everybody was strong, everybody was all state, everybody was the best athlete at their school. It's the same thing in law school. Wow, all these people graduated cum laude, all these people were the best in their class. Mm-hmm. So it was a big transition, but just again, those same principles of hard work and dedication got me through. And I could have gone to a law firm at the time and, worked in the private sector and made tons of money right out of law school. But, 9/11 had happened, and I just wanted to serve my country. I wanted to put on the uniform of my nation and do something more. I wanted to do something that was meaningful, and it wasn't just transactional law with mergers and acquisitions of multi-billion-dollar international corporations. And the Navy JAG recruiter was in the hallway my second year of law school, and she said, "Hey, are you interested in being a Navy JAG?" And I'd seen the movies, seen the show, and coming from Montgomery County, there's just a real sense of service I wanted to fulfill. And I said, well, I'll try it out. So I applied to be an intern. I was an intern, and I loved it. I loved the culture. I worked for an office in New Orleans. Actually, I worked for a Marine. It was a dual office with Marines and Navy people. So I just loved it. I loved the mission. I loved the sense of purpose. I loved helping. I did a lot of, small kind of intern legal clerk things, helping with legal assistance and things like that. But I had some bigger projects as well, and I just fell in love with it. And I said, I have to be a Navy JAG. Mm-hmm. So I applied, and then I did some moot court things where I was able to actually do an argument in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals as an amicus brief. And I did a brief in front of CAF, which is basically the Supreme Court of the military. And I just loved it even more. They had 200 naval officers there from all the various commands. They had an offsite there, and they watched it. And I applied. I got in, and it was a great honor in my life to be part of that. And the idea at the time was, look, I'll do 4 years and see how I like it, and I'll stay in as long as it's fun. That was always, I said that everywhere I went. I'm going to stay in as long as it's fun and it's meaningful, and I'm making an impact. So every time I new orders came up, I got good orders. So I just continued on, and until finally, it was still fun on active duty, but it really came down to a family decision. Mm-hmm. 3 kids, and I'm just sick of moving them around. Kids at 5 schools in 7 years. So I just wanted to get them home to Montgomery County to have that good upbringing around family and friends.
Yeah, exactly. And you could still serve, in the reserves as well, and, still be home and still give back what you've learned, and like I said, in your storied career, and we will dive into that here shortly. But before we get started into that, can you describe? I've got a lot of Marines out here, and the Marines are going to think Naval JAG. Oh shit, is that like the guy that you see if you get in trouble? King, I know there's a much broader level of duties and descriptions of a Naval JAG, and not just, oh yeah, that's the guy you got to go see when you get in trouble out in town, underage drinking or whatever. But you weren't that type of guy. And I just want to know what is the mission of a Naval JAG officer such as yourselves, and what did your day-to-day operations look like as a Naval JAG officer?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, when I first went to the Navy JAG Corps, or in law school, I wanted to be a litigator, and I wanted to litigate cases. So my first tour in the JAG Corps, I was a prosecutor, which, in the military, it's a tool of the commander for good order and discipline. So I would try a few cases, but at the end of the day, it just didn't feel like what I signed up for. I wanted to be value added downrange. I wanted to help with operations and defeating our nation's adversaries. So, the first opportunity I had to raise my hand and deploy, I did. I was selected to go with the Marines, actually to MEF, to Al Anbar province, where I went with 2 MEF. I was on the Marine headquarters group staff, Major General Tryon, and I worked with now General Lecce, but at the time Colonel Lecce, and I had other Marine judge advocates with me, and I really supported combat operations. So whether it was doing fiscal law analysis, administrative law, whatever it was, one of the things that I told my wife about later that she didn't like so much is, we had to do a lot of these detainee releases. So I thought, I'm here. It's a mission of the Marines to turn over these detainees to the government of Iraq. And, even some of the Marine judge advocates didn't like going around on tactical ground movements and, going to various places on the Syrian border and releasing detainees in some of these very dangerous areas. But I thought, look, it's a job that needs to be done. I'm motivated. I want to help out. So I would go release detainees. I would get a few of the warrants. I would deal with the government of Iraq, judges, the local chiefs of police. I went to Al-Qaim, and that was pretty cool to be with the Marines and supporting the Marines for their mission, because they would, a platoon would go out to release these detainees, and I was right there with them. Funny story about that. I'll say it briefly. We were ripping with the 1st Armored Division, and we went into Al-Qaim in a ground movement. If you've been to Al-Qaim, I mean, it's like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I mean, every building is blown up, bullet holes and everything, no services. It was like a movie. We would pull in this ground movement, and this is the Army, not the Marines. Everybody kind of stays in the vehicles, and I'm like, okay, well, I rode with the detainees the whole way. And they said, all right, Jack, you're up. So literally me, the radio guy, and the company commander go into the building while everybody else stayed in the truck. I thought that was strange. I was like, maybe set up a corridor or whatever. But so that was the kind of things I did. I would release detainees and deal with the government of Iraq and support the mission. So,
that's things that, the majority of Americans wouldn't even think, that a lawyer, has got to be doing this type of work on behalf of the DOD, and making sure that everything is done, checks and balances and stuff like that when you're dealing with, we're doing it the right way, when a lot of enemies that we're fighting, they don't have lawyers there releasing detainees and this and that. But, as Americans, of course, we are by the book country, and, we have all these agreements and rules of engagement. There's rules here and there that you've got attorneys like yourself that not only verify, but, ensure that it's being done correctly and it's all being done legally.
Yeah, and you nailed it, because this wasn't this is a matter of policy. I mean, this was during the Obama years, and it was really because we had a lot of detainees that we had released ending up in ditches, decapitated, tortured. And it was no fault of the United States. This was folks that we turned over, and then the extrajudicial killings occurred. So it was really a way to protect the Marines and to make sure that there was no accusations against them. And in Iraq and Afghanistan, the lawyer is a great sign of respect, not so much in the United States, but and so whenever the lawyer was there, releasing them, working with the chief of police, working with the local government officials, there was no shenanigans going on as far as I'm aware. And once we got that paperwork signed, so that was part of the mission to send lawyers out to do these detainee releases. It was really a Marine mission, but I just filled the gaps where I could. I had some interesting experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan. I would do the shuras. I would, share the spoon with the soup. One bowl of soup, one spoon, and it just goes around the table. So one thing I was very sensitive about is not making the Marines look bad or to offend anybody, because those are relationships they had fostered with these local officials. So everything that they needed me to do, I did, because I know it was very important to them to keep those relationships. So, when a Iraqi government official handed me a cool cigarette with no filter, I took his cigarette, and then they laughed at me as I coughed. So it was a good experience, and I'm glad I got to support them. And just in large, when I was in Afghanistan with the SEALs, same thing. Did a lot of detainee ops, but more on the operational law side. It was at the time, it was the ROE. Certain drops off certain platforms required legal concurrence, because we'd had a few bad drops, killed a lot of civilians. So at the end of the day, I think once I was integrated into the units and into the kind of warfighting capability, they appreciated me, because look, I wasn't a no JAG. I was a let's get to yes JAG. And how can I support the mission? And how can I, more importantly, support the guys on the ground to make sure they come home alive and back to their families?
I want to talk about the war fighting capabilities. I want to talk about what a Naval JAG officer does in combat operations. You had stated that you were supporting combat operations, and you also said that you were an operational law JAG. What exactly does that mean?
So, under international law and the law of war, whenever we're putting rounds on target, we got to be very careful that, one misstep and we could have an international incident. And, the way I viewed my job is if we have a bad drop and kill the wrong people, Private Schmuckatelli walking down the street of, name your town in Afghanistan or Iraq, takes a round or gets blown up because somebody's pissed off because we killed the wrong person. So I really viewed my role as helping prevent our guys getting killed later if we kill the wrong people. So that's kind of the mind frame I took all the time to kind of protect them and make sure that the rules of engagement and the law of war were done within the tactical directives and the serial ROE. So, for example, I can't go into too many details because, some of those serial ROE are probably still classified. But depending on the platform and the munition called in and the CDE, the collateral damage estimate ring, and what it was located around, if it was around a hospital or a mosque or some other protected infrastructure under the law of armed conflict and international law, you brought in a JAG, because that would not only help with any kind of legal analysis or top cover to the operational chain of command. But if they needed to drop and I gave a concurrence, they could drop. And at the end of the day, it was a commander's decision, but I took a lot of risk as well, because I wanted to support the guys on the ground. That was always my number one goal, to, execute missions and operations in accordance with international law and law of armed conflict. But
I got a quick question real fast.
Those guys had to be protected on the ground.
So I got a quick question, because I'm sure a lot of guys right now are saying, wait, I don't understand this. When you're in combat, before there's a drop or before there's a raid or whatever, you are briefed on what's going on, and you actually will give permission to commanders to either say yes or no?
Yeah, so it depended on the platform. If it were a fixed, again, I can't go into too many detail, but if it were a fixed wing or a type of munition that had a large CDE ring, and I worked in Afghanistan, I worked with special forces. I worked with the Navy SEALs I worked at a special operations task force, and it would require concurrence, legal concurrence. So it was called the kill chain. And I would be right there on, I would be the last one that would approve it. And we'd be watching this with, Scan Eagle or other assets that could see the fight, see the target. And I would give my concurrence in real time. It would go through, the request would come in from the ground force commander. I had a radio. I would listen in. I'd be watching everything. It would go through the various wickets. It was all real time. It's very quick. This isn't like a bureaucratic process. This is like 1 to 2 minutes to make a decision through the whole chain of command and to get assets on deck. So we had a fires officer that would bring assets on deck. And really in that time, whatever we had in the area, whatever munition it was. I'll give you a couple quick stories just to show some of the ridiculousness of having a JAG in the kill chain. Although it's important, it depends on your JAG. Like you really got to be careful who you put in these positions, because it could really muck it up if you have somebody that can't make decisions or unsure of themselves. We had called in an asset that was a foreign asset. It was all we had. It was a coalition asset to strike a target. And we fell under a little bit of a different serial ROE because we were special operations. And I was on the radio with the pilot, because he wouldn't clear the drop. He wouldn't clear it because he said it was outside of the ROE. So I had to literally get my little book and compare the ROE for US 4A with our ROE, which were similar in a lot of ways, but we had a little bit of more flexibility with tactical directives. And I had to explain to him, here's the ROE you can drop. At this time, our guys are taking rounds. Can you imagine? So the commander just said, JAG, fix this. So I got on the radio and I talked to him and I said, check your logbook, check page 2, section 3, whatever it was. And he said, roger that, cleared hot. And then the next thing you see is boom. And I felt better about that because I could bring value and protect the guys on the ground. Go ahead.
This is how it goes down in combat.
That's crazy, right?
You're talking to a pilot in real time. Our Marines are being actively under attack, and you're waiting to clear protocol due to the international law before that pilot can go in hot, strike the target to protect our assets on the ground.
Well, like I said, at the time, it was the Obama administration. So a lot of those authorities were held very high. And we did have a few missteps where, buildings or a lot of civilians were killed in the theater. Mm-hmm. So it was becoming very problematic because there were riots around the country. And frankly, a lot of times when we were killing, it was a ruse. So they would want us to drop bombs on them, and then it ended up being an orphanage. They would literally go to protected places and fire from those positions. Again, even if hostiles are using those positions to fire from, and it's a protected infrastructure, we can still strike that target. It just takes a higher level of review. So it was a lot of circumstances like that. And look, and the first thing I would tell all these guys is, look, you have inherent right to self-defense. If you're being fired on, you call in whatever you have to do to eliminate the threat, and I'm going to have your back. I always told my guys that, and they had the trust and confidence in me. I mean, I'll tell you about some of the SEALs were in a firefight and in a cemetery, and one guy grabbed a kid, and he was shooting at the SEAL team as they were moving through, and this is after the fact. They didn't shoot the guy. But he came to me afterwards. I would usually meet him after an op and on the flight line, and because sometimes they had detainees. And he said, could I have killed that guy? I said, absolutely, you could have killed that guy. I sauld, look, if you feel like you're at risk or your team's at risk, you need to defend yourself. Don't ever forget you have an inherent right to self-defense. And that would have been, it would have been collateral damage. But, the thing that this SEAL said to me I really respected him. He said, yeah, I thought I could have killed him. But it was one of those questions, could I have lived with that on my conscience if I'd killed a kid? So I really respected him saying that. But at the end of the day, he could have done what was necessary to protect himself and his team. So it was a very interesting time, especially with the SEAL teams. in the kill chain, we had another example where this really tested my mettle as a JAG. And I've told this story a couple times, but we had a ground force commander calling in fires, and I can't go into too many details, but essentially they were planning, coordinating an attack. Our guys weren't under a direct threat at the time, but they were going to be because they were setting up for an attack. Well, they were in a shura. They were in a circle planning the attack, and we had we knew what they were talking about, and essentially because the guys were close enough, but essentially they called in for a strike to take out the element because it was a hostile intent. They were showing hostile intent. They were C2 in an operation that when the SEALs cleared the village, they were going to open up on small arms fire, and they called in a drop. So went through the normal thing. We had an asset on deck, and it got to me, and I kind of looked at the feed. It was grainy, and they were in a circle. And just the week before, an incident had happened in Sodef West where we had killed a bunch of kids that were in a circle like that where they were coordinating an attack. Well, I kind of looked closer, and something didn't seem right. My gut was going off, and they were holding something in their laps. And I went back to the ground force commander through the commander, and I said, "Can you confirm 0 CivCast, 0 CDE? Do they have anything in their laps?" And he said, "Nope, 0 CivCast, 0 CDE." Not to mention they were also around a mosque, which is, again, I said it's fine. You just have to get a higher level authority. So the people in the room, I couldn't give a legal concurrence. I don't know if it was my instinct or just something didn't seem right, but everybody in the room, man, these are SEALs and Green Berets, are like, "Oh, JAG, you don't want to. Our guys are in danger. You don't want to kill anybody. You don't want to support our guys." And the commander went back to me and he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I'm sure something doesn't feel right." So about 30-40 seconds went by, and then the guys on the ground obviously were frustrated, but the shura broke, and sure enough, every one of them had a baby in their lap. So that was a ruse. That was a setup to get us to kill the local town children, and then basically it would eliminate any white space we were trying to build and any kind of partnerships or coalition building in that area. That was the intent of the enemy. They were willing to sacrifice their children in the village and themselves to make sure that the Americans couldn't get a foothold and build more coalition forces. So right after that happened, the room was silent, and the commander turned around to me and he said, "You just saved us in Afghanistan." And that was a good feeling because, I wanted to support the guys on the ground, but I also didn't want other guys to get killed later because we killed a bunch of children or risk the mission in the United States. So that was a test of my resolve and my instincts, and also just my gut feeling. And the guys were all very thankful afterwards that I had stood up and went against the entire room, against the OPSO, against the XO, the CO, and even the ground force commander. But the caveat to that story is later on, we got all those guys. So we dropped a bomb on them, killed every single one of them without kids. So as far as I'm concerned, mission accomplished. So we took out the bad guys, and we didn't have an international incident.
And you stood your ground.
Right.
Knowing that, hey, look, guys, this is the right thing to do. This is what I'm going to do. And this is what I'm going to suggest you do. And they did, and they listened. And I know you've had an honorable career. I mean, a storied career. I mean, we can't even get into the majority of the stuff that you've been in is because it's so high level and it's so sophisticated, and it's definitely a very rewarding job, challenging. You're holding life in the palm of your hand. You're holding the lives of Marines and soldiers and Navy SEALs and civilians. And a lot of the times you're making the calls immediately. You don't have minutes to think, you have seconds to think. So you need to be you need to be so mentally focused and so mentally sharp that your mind is like a sharpened pencil. It's like it has got to be sharp to the point to where you could put hundreds and hundreds of lives on the line, to the point to where you could make the news in the morning because of a strike that you called in or didn't call in. I mean, you are holding everything in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. And we were one bad strike away from, the whole sort of, Special Operations Command, chain of command getting fired. Also, they had some pretty good ROE that we didn't want to jeopardize, because I wanted our guys to have the greatest flexibility. So that was always on the back of my mind too, that, I got to make sure that these guys have the greatest flexibility to defend themselves and to take out hostile forces. So I was also protecting their ROE. And, they never really questioned me again. It was, Hullihan's got it. And another thing that was very valuable, and I don't want to go into too many war stories or whatever, but the SEAL team commander, took me out on foot patrols. He wasn't really supposed to, the JAG wasn't supposed to go out on foot patrols, but I would go on foot patrols in, the Chora Valley and these other places, because he thought there was a lot of value and my wife hates the fact that I would go on foot patrols. There's a lot of value in me understanding what it's like to be on a foot patrol, what it's like to be in a crowd of Afghans. And one of the most valuable stories I had from that is, I went on a foot patrol, and, it was a standard 2x2 column, and we were patrolling through a village to go meet the local elder. And there was some mission intel that there was going to be a vehicle-borne IED, motorcycle IED, that was going to try and break the column and detonate. Well, like a week before in Kabul, that had happened, and actually it killed a lot of people, because they weren't, they were all clustered. Anyway, bad tactics. But so, I was responsible for, going to the corner and making sure people didn't break the column. And that was very nerve-wracking, because I had given hundreds of ROE briefs, and I'd given so many briefs about, defending yourself and going through the serial ROE, but like none of that matters when you're out on a foot patrol and you just want to make sure you're not the guy that gets the guy in front of you, the guy behind you killed. Mm-hmm. So in this particular story, this individual, I saw him get turned around at the front of the column, and he was going down an alleyway, and I was on the column. The next SEAL was like 20, 30 yards up, and then there was a guy way behind me. He got caught up doing something, so it was just me. And this guy's rolling on a motorcycle who had already been turned around, and he tries to come through the middle of the column. Mm-hmm. Well, I went through my ROE checklist. I gave him, hand signal. That's what I teach all these guys to do. And then I yelled out stop in Pashtun or whatever it was at the time, and he kept coming. So I raised my rifle, and if that guy had gotten, if he had gotten any closer, I was going to put a round through him. So my heart was beating. I was nervous. I was more worried about the guys in front of me and behind me. And he turned around, thank God. But, when we got back to the base, I told the commander about that. Like, now I know why you had me on these foot patrols. He's like, now do you understand? I said, yes, sir, I understand. I will never view an ROE brief the same way, because you can talk about this stuff all day, but until you're in that moment, where you have to, there's 15 Americans out in the middle of an Afghan village, and you're responsible for everybody else. That's the way I viewed it. Like, I am responsible for making sure I'm not the guy that gets somebody killed. So that was very eye-opening to me. And that was one of the most memorable experiences of my time in the Navy JAG Corps, was that moment where I realized that I didn't know what I was talking about in half of these ROE briefs, because it's a different experience when your life's on the line.
Yeah. And then, you were there, boots on the ground, staring at this guy who was coming at you. You give a halt, stop, or, you're going to get fired upon. And of course, if anybody would know the rules of engagement, it would be you. But still, you're like, dang, like I gotta make a split second decision here. But that naval commander or that platoon commander for that SEAL team definitely showed some great leadership in bringing you out to do some cross training, to say, hey, come on out and do a ride along with us, if you will, because now you have seen that. And I'm going to describe it like this, or I'm going to relate it to this. A lot of these big cities in America, they have prosecutors that don't really prosecute anymore, and you've got these county judges and these city managers that let the bad guys out. And a lot of these people don't see what police officers go through in day-to-day operations. And just like you did, you went on a ride along to see, hey, this is what it's like. This is boots on the ground. This is what's going on. When you guys are back in the tent talking about it, this is what's going on. I want you to see it with your own eyes so you can vision it, live it, breathe it, smell it. And that's why I think prosecutors, city managers, county judges, they all should go on ride-alongs at least once a month in their police precincts to see what these police officers and first responders are going through every single day on the streets of our country. I think that would definitely change a lot of things in our country very, very quickly.
That's a really good idea. And I agree. And I think most prosecutors, at least the kind of low level, not the political hacks, the politicians, but the prosecutors are doing it for honorable reasons. But I do agree, especially with all the police shootings and the scrutiny on that. I mean, man, can you imagine? Like, your life is on the line and your partner's life is on the line, and you have literally seconds to make a decision. And a lot of those decisions are not made from, what do I do? It's just the training that has gone into that. And the training is what kicks in. And it's really a non-decision. And I think most of the times we need to support our police officers and realize that, every once in a while you'll have a bad shoot or a bad kill just because somebody had bad intent. But I think the majority of these police officers just out there doing their job and trying to come home to their family deserve our deference and deserve our understanding to not Monday morning quarterback every single one of these decisions. That's the same analysis I took with our guys on the ground to realizing, when I was walking through that village and, making sure I didn't step on anything that looked weird or make sure somebody didn't break the column and blow me up and blow up other people. You got to put yourself in that mind frame and put yourself, walk in their shoes for a little while before you really understand and have empathy for what they're going through. So, I was embarrassed. I got to tell you, man, I was embarrassed. Like, all the ROE briefs I had given over the years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and really didn't understand until I was on the ground and understood, the emotion of that, of making that split-second decision.
Absolutely. I definitely think that more people should get involved when it comes to cross training, especially if your, job is on that same line of path or whatever, because people need to better understand how things actually work when you're in an alley, when you're on the streets, when you're in the air, when you're on the battlefield, when you're looking at the enemy right eye to eye, toe to toe. And I think that would change a lot of hearts and minds, if they were to ever engage like that. And I think that would be very honorable too, because that would only improve the community. It would only improve the morale of these departments and everything else too. And I bring up this police as an example, because that's something that everybody that's listening to this can relate to, perhaps may not be able to relate to all these different patrols and combat patrols and, call for fire and action and combat overseas operations.
Put it in a context of like a teacher, like not all kids are respectful and they don't say yes, sir, no, sir. Like I teach my kids or you teach your kids. There are kids out there that will disrespect the teacher. They are disrupting the classroom. So, go sit in a classroom and see how wild it is. And we'll have a little more empathy for some teachers that really are just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have.
Yeah, I can imagine, having a bunch of kids in there, just throwing crap at the teacher. And I'm not going to say I was an angel, but,
yeah,
that's probably why I joined the Marine Corps, but I'm better now. And I've raised my kids right. No, I was a good kid, but, I was a class clown. I was a class clown. I'll get that.
That's okay.
So I want to ask you, did you ever get any of these after action reports on these kill chains that you were a part of? And, and if so, I'm sure that the after actions are very important to say, hey, look, was it good? Did we lose anything? Did we protect our troops on the ground? Did we protect assets? Did we protect civilians? Did you ever get back any good feedback on the kill chains that you actually were responsible for?
Yeah, I mean, we would send up a sit rep every time we killed guys or took out targets. That was kind of one of the requirements when we dropped off of certain platforms. So I would review all those, make sure they were clear, make sure the language was precise, because one wrong word could obviously get a lot of questions. So I would review those as they went up the chain. From that deployment, I was very happy, and the commander was very happy that we were able to eliminate all the targets that we wanted to. We had 0 civilian casualties, 0 allegations of civilian casualties, 0 allegations of civilian, collateral damage. So that was very rare for a SOTF at the time, to have 0 allegations of any civilians being killed. And we still got the mission done. And, none of our guys on my deployment got killed. We had a couple guys, Bo Reichenbach and another Chris Surley. They had stepped on an IED and had gotten lost some limbs and an eye, but that was really it. We didn't have anybody get killed, and we took care of the mission. So I was proud of that deployment.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. Those kill chains, man. That's very interesting, and I know the people that are listening to this today are going to be like, "Wow, that is some perspective right there from a Naval JAG officer on the ground that is calling the shots with other commanders in unison, in support and defending of the United States of America." I mean,
hopefully none of the combat vets out there are like, I knew it. It was some lawyer making a decision, but I supported our guys. And like I said earlier, not everybody is going to make that quick decision and make the right decision. But I was proud I was able to support our guys, and we always, it appears, and I'm confident that we always did the right thing and made sure all our guys came home and we didn't cause an international incident.
Well, I've known you for some time now. I consider you a great friend of mine, and you are one squared away individual. And folks, when I say storied career, this guy right here is a legend. I mean, this guy, what he's done in the Navy, and even more now what he's doing, as an attorney in Texas. This guy is definitely somebody that you would always want on your side to do it all the right way, with honor, with courage, and with commitment. Folks, we're being joined today by Commander John Hullihan, Naval JAG. And we're just talking a little bit about his career, family, and got a few more questions for you before we wrap this up. But I wanted to ask you, what's been your most rewarding moment of your career?
Well, I mean, in my career, obviously most rewarding has been the birth of my children and my marriage. But from my career, I think, graduating law school and passing the bar exam. I mean, that was really difficult to pass the bar exam and to graduate from law school. So I was, coming from New Caney High School in East Montgomery County, public education kid. A lot of the people that I was in law school with, at least, were like Harvard grads, Georgetown, went to all these private high schools. So that was a huge accomplishment as far as my education. My career, I think, just being part of the effort and being an enabler to support combat operations. Just some of the stories I told, just making sure that our guys came home alive and making sure they came home safe. And when we got off that plane and, they could hug their kids and see their wife. And I knew that I helped, at least had a small part in that, to make sure they were getting good, competent advice for dropping bombs or whatever else there may be. That overall is the most important thing in my career. And just being a voice for liberty. This is more generic, but just being a voice for people that, they've had there's been a breach of liberty somehow, whether it's personal or been wronged in some way, some kind from a freedom perspective, or that's been very, very rewarding. I represented some of America's frontline doctors after I got out of the Navy that were being essentially had their medical license under threat for prescribing ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. And I was very happy that I was able to successfully defend that. That was rewarding because I knew that without those doctors that were willing to prescribe those medications that they believed would save lives, without me helping them, that people would die. So that was very rewarding, knowing that I had a direct impact on enabling the doctors to continue to prescribe the medicine that their training, their education, their expertise led them to believe would save lives, and it did. So that was a very rewarding aspect of my career as well. So, from my military career, Navy JAG to civilian, I've had a lot of really interesting experiences where I've been in the right place at the right time. So
yeah, you've had a remarkable career, folks, and I don't say that lightly. Like I said, Johnathan Hullihan is a rising star in the United States of America, folks. And believe me when I say that, this guy here is doing good things. He's an honorable man. He's a patriot. He's a husband. He's a father. And he's an attorney. And he's a good one. And, our country needs more good.
I really appreciate that, Brian. And like just the things you've done, I've been so impressed with your support to veterans and other people giving folks a voice. Just last week when you were able to organize those Marines to carry the casket out of a World War II veteran from the USS Saratoga, my neighbor Leroy, you snap-toed, and like a Marine, you had all the logistics done. And you as well, I'm very impressed with you, and I appreciate it. And for all those lawyers out there, I want to remind them that we swore an oath. Our attorney's oath is to the Constitution. And my oath is to the Constitution of the state of Texas and the Constitution of the United States of America. So just like I swore an oath as a naval officer, I swore an oath as an attorney. And I think it's important that attorneys remember that we swore an oath to the U.S. Constitution. So never forget that as well, as you hear some of these attorneys out there that seem like they're, off the edge of the cliff.
Some very good final words there, because it seems as if, that Constitution is now just right. I mean, it's as if we're not using it. It's old, and we're doing things different these days, but that's not true. And, that the Constitution is still in play, and to have an attorney like you to stand up and say, no, I'm going to fight for what's right. I'm going to fight for freedom. I'm going to fight for liberty. I'm going to fight for the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to fight for the Constitution that says so, that grants me the rights and the freedoms and the liberties to do so. And you are standing with those people now that are trying to, defend the Constitution. So for that, I mean, you do some big work. It's extremely honorable. I know it's difficult. I know it's not easy, very stressful, but you are a very level-headed, professional, intelligent guy. And like I said, always the jobs that we can handle. And that's why you've been tasked with being an attorney.
Yeah, no, it's an honor in my lifetime to, kind of carry the torch of liberty. I do hear that very briefly. I hear, the Constitution's old, it's antiquated. Mm-hmm. Look, the founders of our Constitution were the most brilliant men. The philosophers they went back to, Cicero and Burke and all these people, when they thought about individual liberty and limited government and a republic, they set this system up to go for as long as it can go. And, as long as we have an engaged populace and as long as people understand that, the system only works if they participate and they value their freedom, they value their liberty, then we will continue on. But, it's not antiquated. Everything in there means something.